Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ellena. This is not centered, but we're going to roll with it. My name is Ellena, and on this channel, we review books. Long format, typically focusing on one book at a time. This book that I'm going to talk about today, as you can tell by the title, is Blueberries by Ellena Savage. Oh man, we have some things to get into. This book is an Instagram darling. It's very photographable, right? It looks good. The cover is interesting. And there is a YouTuber, I can't remember the YouTuber's name, what is happening? She did a book review. Or was it a book review? I think she did a vlog. Anyway, she talked about this book on her channel. Let's get to the point. She talked about this book on her channel, and that kind of catapulted this book in some way. That's when I started seeing people on Instagram saying, "Oh, I started reading this book because of this person on the internet." And so I've been aware of this book since since it's released, at least since 2019, at least. When was it published? 1 minute. No. I didn't realize it was. Okay, this book was published in 2020. So yes, I was definitely posting book content. I had to slam it like that. That was so aggressive. So I remember when this book was making the rounds, and it still makes the rounds every so often. And I was back and forth on whether or not I wanted to read it, because sometimes I'm that person. I will read a book to see what the hype is about. And so I decided to just suck it up and read it, just to see what the deal was. Also because this author plays around with format, and so I wanted to see what that was about. Let me stop rambling. Let's get into the book review, because I have some things to say. I'm going to praise and critique in this review. Just be forewarned. So if you like this book, don't let me yuck your yum. I didn't dislike it. Don't get me wrong. I didn't dislike it, but I'm going to both praise this book and critique it, because there were times I was like, wow, that was really well done. And other times I was like, girl, no. And of course, I know in an instant that my memory was all wrong. I must have, at some point over the years, switched the names of the faces. So Blueberries by Ellena Savage. First of all, her last name is gold, right? Like, I want to put an accent over that E and be like Savage or something. Yeah. Well, that means that we need a U in it. Anyway, so this is I'm in rare form today. This is nonfiction. It is a collection of essays written by the author, recounting key events in her life. And so therefore, of course, you're going to get this commentary on memories, some of her experiences, some of her own beliefs. And so there is definitely some political, social, cultural discussion in this book. And she's also experimenting with various creative writing forms. So there is an essay that is written like a magazine. It looks like it's written in two columns, like if you were to look at a newspaper or a magazine. And one column is like commentary, and the other column is the actual essay. And she also experiments with sentence structure. You will notice a lack of commas where you would traditionally put commas. And that really threw some readers off when I was looking at reviews. It threw me off every now and then. I thought it was a little annoying in some places, but that wasn't a big deal to me. But I can see why, because there is a flow when you're reading, and languages have grammatical rules. And so for some people it's off-putting, but it's creative writing. I mean, she can experiment with the form if she wants to. Doesn't mean that people have to like it. Let's jump into some themes. The most common theme throughout all of these essays is memory, which is a theme that is very, very common in a lot of literature. I think for good reason, because people typically use writing as a means of reflection. So as she's recounting these various events in her life, some of them which are life-altering, like she was assaulted in Portugal. And so the first essay is her recounting that, and I think that is actually the best essay in the whole book, or the whole collection. That was really, really well done. She's contemplating constantly, not just in that first essay, but through the remainder of the work, whether or not her memory can even be trusted. Because you may have retained the memory, but over time, the memory does change. Other times, the story is about the memorization act, about how every memory once recalled becomes a re-remembrance, a new memory made mildly altered from an earlier version. But somehow my memory of him, only a few days old, was totally altered. Amorphous in my imagination, he had become a composite of faces I already knew. Reading Blueberries for me was an interesting experience, I think, as you can probably tell, because I said I have critiques for this book and praise for this book. Like I said, there were times I rolled my eyes hard. I mean, I was like, And there were other times I was like, girl, preach, you know? She talks a lot about performative altruism, which is something that I, in my personal life, critique social media for all the time, okay? One thing that I cannot stand is when people do good deeds and then record themselves doing good deeds and then post it on the internet. That bothers me. Because I'm like, okay, but you look like a narcissist. It bothers me. Like, do the good deed and be done with it. Why do we have to know? Performative altruism gets on my nerves. Okay, that's just, that could be a whole video essay. But she does talk a lot about performative altruism and how we're all caught in this matrix that gives us the illusion of being good. Again, refer to previous rant about social media and how people use it to make themselves look a certain way. And how we're constantly being bombarded with this idea or this narrative that we're not doing well enough. Again, comparison is the thief of joy. We see other people doing things, we think we aren't doing enough, or you get this narrative like you don't recycle enough, you don't eat organically, blah, blah, blah. And we're often being dictated to by people who are higher up. You can call them the elite if you want to, those in power, who are doing what they want to do while preaching to us, oh, you need to use less gas, but they have private jets, that kind of thing. Rules for thee and not for we. So, when she touched on that, I was like, I'm picking up what you're putting down. And in my culture, this niche, comfortable and rather unpleasant culture, this sort of implies I'm a bad person, and I don't consider myself that. Not really, but I am a person trapped inside a matrix of bad ideas, bad histories, bad reactions. We're supposed to tut-tut, even if we're not the elite, because people who have bad taste in things or extravagant are not supposed to have the money, and they're not supposed to be wasteful like the true elite who eat organic blueberries. This is an example of something that I think that she portrayed really, really well. And there are moments throughout these various essays that I thought were very thought-provoking. Even if I didn't 100% agree with her, I could see where she was coming from. And I'm like, okay, I get it. That's fair. That's a fair judgment. That's a fair assessment. However, I did think that some of her arguments were weak and easily refuted, and maybe too politically correct, in my opinion. There are certain things where I just was like, ugh, I'm so sick of hearing about this. You know what I mean? It's just, she hit all those political correct checkpoints, and I was like, throw it away. Like, it's just, you start to, when there are certain topics that come up in society now and culture, you just almost start to disassociate. Yeah. Because right at this point, the words are used so much, they have lost their meaning. I'm going to get into some of that. So also some of her comments that were made, and I'm going to get really specific in this one. And some people could say this is nitpicking, but I don't like it when people do this. I don't like when people do this in literature. I don't like it when people do it in arguments and debates. I think it's weak. When people will make this blatant statement and say, well, when you do this, it's just totally unsafe, or this equals this. And I'm like, no, there's nuance. Let me stop beating around the bush. I'm being cryptic. So And again, there are certain things that she claimed that could be easily refuted with a quick Google search. She talks a lot. Savage talks a lot about men in the patriarchy, and it came across to me as very, very bitter. And I was like, does she not like men? Even though I know she married to one, does she not like men? I'm going to be honest with you. When things don't go well in my life or something doesn't work out for me, I ain't blaming men. I'm looking at myself. I'm like, maybe that just wasn't for me? And if somebody doesn't like me, they just don't like me. I take people and how I engage with them on a case-by-case basis. Like, I don't apply terms like patriarchy or racism to everything, right? That just gets on my nerves. But it's just men this, the patriarchy that, women suffer like this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, give it a rest. It was just so, this is, again, just these blanket terms that you hear now and again, and you're like, I'm shutting down. It was very repetitive. I found it annoying. Granted, she does admit that she's attitudinal about it. She admits that she's bitter about some things. And this is where I find this book interesting, is because she does have a lot of self-awareness. She says, oh, I know that this is where I fall on the spectrum, or I know I feel this way about this. And so you're like, I'm the type of person, cool. Like, do you? Like, at least you're aware of it, right? Some people could argue the same about me. I know how I feel about certain things, and I'm not going to deny it. So here's an example. Had I been male, this might have been of use to some kind of extremist organization. I can't stop laughing, I'm sorry. Or to federal politics, but because I'm a female, I am contemptuous of male power, and because of this, my body is a body of emasculation, and because of this, I have a bad attitude. So, I mean, she's saying the thing. This is why stuff like this annoys me. And again, she can do whatever she wants to do. Freedom of speech. That's how you feel. That's how you feel. I mean, I can just say, okay, that's not my experience. I just don't have crappy men in my life. You know what I mean? We live in this culture where it's almost okay to hate men. What? That bothers me. I work with excellent people, and I work predominantly with men. I'm not disrespected. I'm not being crushed under other people's foot. I'm not treated less than. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. Sometimes people are gross because they're just, human nature is gross. And I'm just not going to lump all men together. That's just crazy to me. Was that a bit of a rant? Maybe, whatever. And I felt this way about a lot of things that Savage complains about: men, capitalism, identity politics, the same things in culture that we just hear over and over and over again. And again, you just start to shut down because you hear these terms over and over again, and they're typically not nuanced conversations. And you just like, okay, I can't be bothered. And the way that she complains about certain things, in my opinion, from my view, I'm not the only person who's mentioned this about this book. If you go on Goodreads and read the 1 to 2 star reviews, I was like, is it just me? It's not just me. It comes across that, unfortunately, it seems like she's not a happy individual. I can't judge that. As I don't know her as a person, correct? But based on what she chose to write about in this collection, she comes across as sad, and it made me sad for her. But this is just an impression. I could be totally wrong. She could be super happy, but just because this is what certain things she decided to focus on in this book, it came across that she was more melancholy. And I'm like, maybe because I'm a realist, but I do choose to be more optimistic about certain things. And so I'm the type of person where I'm like, there's always something good to focus on. You know what I mean? There's always something that you can acknowledge is going well. You can choose to be in that mindset. And so I'm like, you got to balance it, hon. You got to balance it. You know what I mean? Like my mother says, you should laugh every day. And if you haven't, go make yourself laugh. Go watch a funny video. before you go to bed, you're going to laugh today. I have had my mother send me texts that have said, have you laughed today? So I think it's just, we do have autonomy over our moods. Those crows are hollering. Okay. So here's a quote. But I'm also going to defend her, and because she acknowledges this herself, and then she's reconciled. You can see that she's willing to acknowledge that in some cases she may be a little inconsistent, as we all are. Apart from this temporary love-blessed reprieve, in general, I am not a happy person. In general, I unreasonably assume I am difficult and unlikable. I assume that every email contains a threat. How do you live a catastrophe without turning into a cliche? Again, Savage is very, very self-aware. And so I find that really refreshing because you can't knock it. Like if somebody is like, hey, this is how I feel, and I acknowledge that this is a reality for me. Like I'm not in denial about myself. I'm like, okay, cool. I love self-awareness. You can't knock her for that. She's putting it all out there. I did find some of her other arguments weak and actually a little cringy. And I winced a few times at some of the things that she said. But again, she has the right to say it. I don't have to agree with it. And kudos for having the guts to say the things, right? Now, this is one claim. I have, I think, 2 or 3 here that she said. Here's a quote. And for me, some people are going to say that I'm nitpicking, but just because of my line of work and I have access to professionals in this field every day, I was like, did she research? Or are you just complaining to make it sound like you're like socially righteous? You know what I mean? Like virtue signaling. I could be wrong, but I'm just like, stop complaining for the sake of complaining and do some research. All right, what's the quote? And frankly, the absence of streetlights is a public health and safety issue. People are like, really, Ellena? You picked that out? Yes, I did. And I'm about to bring the facts. I'm about to read the receipts. So for the record, Savage is from Australia, and I believe in the area in which this particular quote was pulled from, because she's talking about a particular area where she grew up. It's not a densely populated area. It's probably more suburban, and so I'm like, yes and no, Savage. Yes and no. I have a friend who is a traffic engineer. We work in the same organization. And I also work directly with civil engineers and engineers who have certifications and degrees to come up with traffic patterns. That also includes streetlights are often incorporated into, traffic plans and lighting and all that stuff. The distribution of streetlights is affected by many things. There are standards based on your location about how and where those lights are placed. It can be due to safety issues, true. Like if it's an area is dark and you have a lot of crime occurring in an area, light it up. Well-lit areas do discourage crime because you're putting a literal beacon on the person committing the crime, right? But it also has a lot to do with population density, traffic flow, which is why there are less street lights in rural areas. There's nobody there. Why? Street lights are expensive. I forgot how expensive street lights are. I remember sitting in a work meeting once and somebody's like, yeah, street lights actually cost this much. Like the bulb, not even the pole and the light bulbs. I was like, oh my goodness, they're very expensive. So how they're allocated, there's a method to the madness. And again, all this, so there are rules for this. And of course, she's in Australia. I'm pretty sure Australia has their own rules. In the United States, we have our own rules, and those rules are also going to change. Those regulations are going to be subject to your locality. There are very specific lighting pattern guides that detail light dispersion, height, the distance, the type of lights you're using, the color of the light. All of that to say, when I see people just throw these claims out, I'm like, correlation does not equal causation. Like, you just want to sound you just want to sound aware, and you're not. You're not accurate. And it just like there's a lot of complaining in this book or in these essays, and it just sounds like something else this person is griping about. And this is something that could have been answered in a quick Google search. And if you feel like your area needs better light, advocate for that. Figure out how to get better light. I tell this to people all the time in my line of work. Or I would say me and my coworkers tell this. If you see something that needs to be done, please let us know, because we are not omniscient, and we will do our best to see what we can do for you. Help us help you. And so, shout out to my friend who confirmed my hunch that this is more nuanced than just somebody making a claim. Am I being nitpicky? Maybe. Let's go on to the next quote. This one bothered me as well. Of course, as a feminist, I saw her extravagant makeup and her limbs taught despite the red wine calories as a kind of work, too, at least of imagination and aspiration. Whoo, what? What? No, I'm sorry. Kind of rude, isn't it? I felt that to be, as a feminist, the author, why do you care what another woman is doing? Doesn't that sound contradictory? Like, if this woman that you're observing wants to wear makeup because she wants to have, she wants to keep her muscles taut for whatever reason, for whether that be aesthetics or health or whatever, that's her business. That's her business. Let her be great. What's she got to do with you? I need you to stay in your lane. Like, that bothered me. Like, I thought feminism was supposed to be, oh, you have the choice to do the thing that you want to do. Stop projecting. Homegirl wants to have cake face, so whether she has to take her makeup off with the squeegee, the little things that you clean your windows with, every night, that's her business. What I got to do with you? Stuff like that. I'm just like, leave homegirl alone, man. She's just out here living her best life. And so what if she has red wine calories? Homegirl wants to drink all this red wine and then somehow is made, because there's a lot of calories in alcohol, people. Calories in, calories out. But somehow she has figured out a way to stay trim and fit because that's how she wants to look. Let her be great. Mind your business. Mind your business. Mind it. I'm just saying. Here's another one. Childcare is a feminist issue. But moreover, it is a capitalist issue. Like all capitalist issues, it is an issue for artists who, like most women, are towards the bottom of the heap. Children might add value to one's life, intangible value, but at least non-quantifiable value. But they cost a lot, more than what some people possess. I winced when I read that in the book for the first time. I winced. I really did. I don't have children at this moment in my life, but whoa. Keep in mind that Savage also does not have children. I have worked in childcare. And I've known many fathers who have felt this burden as well. The childcare issue, especially if it's a single parent household for whatever reason. I'm not saying that it is, we do live in an economic situation. Things have changed. Think about your grandparents or your parents where it was more feasible for one person to work and the other to stay at home for childcare if that was needed. I get it. It's harder in certain economies to make ends meet. Yes, having children is expensive. But these same people have pets. Pets are expensive, so, okay. But to me, the conflation of children being a burden bothered me. Like, aren't children a blessing? Like, if you don't want children, that's on you. That's fine. I don't think that parenthood is for everybody. But the focus that children and childcare is a burden bothered me, because in my view, and again, we have different views here, that's fine. me and the author maybe, that, because I don't think she wants to be a parent. Okay, cool. Children are a blessing, in my opinion. And I think we live in an increasingly selfish society where you see people getting married and then there's divorcing because, oh, I just want to go be my true authentic self. You didn't get married to be your true authentic self. You got married, in my view. Let me speak for myself. If I get married, when I get married, I'm putting away more selfish things to pursue something with somebody, right? And when children come into that mix, it's a unit, right? My parents, and I came from a household where my parents sacrificed so that me and my siblings could have. And that sacrifice wasn't a burden to them. That didn't mean that it was difficult, that things weren't difficult, but they saw it as a greater means to an end. And in the long run, their work and their sacrifice paid off, and I guarantee you they don't regret it. My parents say this frequently, like, we don't regret the decisions that we made because look at the quality of our children. Functioning adults that are emotionally, mentally, and physically well. A lot of, because my parents made sacrifices, they were often judged for some of the decisions that they made because they were like, no, we're pursuing something else. We know what we're doing. Mind your business. So that was a bit of a rant. I'm sorry. That may be a detour, but it's so much more complex than that. Like, that bothered me. I thought it was kind of cringy. And yeah, parenthood is not easy. I don't have children, but I have friends who have children, and it's not easy, but would they take it back? I doubt it. Also, again, this commentary that women are just at the bottom of the heap. This is the 21st century. I'm not saying that there aren't cases when people get put down at work for whatever reason, you know what I mean? But overall, at least for me, living where I live in the United States of America, if I want it, I can go get it. Like, in some cases, it's being passed out to you. You know what I mean? Like, if I've wanted something, I've been able to pursue it. And I have worked in male-dominated spaces, blatantly. And I'm definitely not at the bottom of the heap. I have male coworkers who will sometimes call me up and say, I just want to let you know that we appreciate what you do. You're an asset to this organization. And then they back that up, right? They back that up with the work environment and all that stuff. I get it. I work in a work environment that's not normal. I work with really great people, but I'm treated with the utmost respect and care. Like, I have coworkers, most of them male. If I got into a bind today, they would be at my house in 30 minutes and say, what do you need? Right? These generalized statements, they bother me. Like, why do we always have to be pitted against each other? You know what I mean? Like, that's the work together as a unit, right? And again, blaming capitalism and men for stuff is just too easy in my book, right? We live in a world where people are imperfect and things are fallible. And unfortunately, we're all going to go through seasons where we're mistreated. And life is hard and there are things that are challenges that we have to work through. Okay, whatever. Now, let me move on. Criticism aside, because I feel like I did maybe focus the bulk of this review, I'm 30 minutes in, criticizing the author and some things that I was just like, I read and I was like, ugh, that rubbed me the wrong way. Let me say, I didn't dislike this book. Me and the author just don't see eye to eye on things. This is well written. This woman can write, okay? There were some sentences I was like, girl, do the thing, yes. I really appreciated the clever way that she wrote some of these essays and played around with form. And I will say this, even though I've said this earlier, even though I disagreed with her on some things, not all things, some things, she is self-aware. She believes what she believes and she says what she wants to say, as she should. I believe that freedom of speech, she should be able to say whatever she wants to say. And you can see in some of the essays that there are times when she's realizing that some of the things that she's saying are contradictory, because we're all walking contradictions in some way. It's almost like you can still see her processing things, as we all are. The way that as we go through life and we mature, the way that we see things will start to change as we get older, we experience different things. And so you can kind of see that in this collection. I would be curious to know how long it took her to put these together, and if you could even kind of track some of those. I don't know. That might be a reach. Even though there were times I was like, ugh, I disagree with you. The way that this reads, I felt like I was having a conversation with the author, which I think was really uniquely the way that she wrote it. And even though, what am I trying to say? I felt like I was having a conversation with the author. Like there were times I would verbally respond back to the book, or doodle in the margins, or write in the margins like, well, what about this? Or what if you approached it from this way? I annotated this book a lot. I felt like if Savage and I, having various opinions on certain things, were sitting face to face, I actually think it would be a really interesting conversation, and we could chuckle with each other and have really thought-provoking dialogue. I think we would agree and disagree on some things, and maybe we would agree like, yeah, this is a problem. I just think that maybe we would disagree on this, how the solution should be brought about, and just have a good debate and conversation, and have a cup of coffee and a pastry, and just have a healthy discussion. That is the impression that I got from this, even though there were some things I was like, no, ma'am. And some things I was like, that's a whole sermon. You know what I mean? She's clearly a very talented writer. And she actually made me want to add more nonfiction memoir type books to my TBR. I don't really read a lot of memoirs, but I still got a lot out of this, and it made me want to add more memoirs and engage with other people's thoughts, or how do you approach this, or even if I don't agree with this, but I do agree with this, it's interesting to have this constant dialogue going, right? I gave this a 3 out of 5 for all the reasons I just said. To me, I get why people really, really liked this. I get why a lot of people didn't like it. For me, it was middle of the road, because I felt like some things were just blamed too easily, right? But she's a really phenomenal writer, and it was creatively done. Have you read Blueberries? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Please let me know below. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment as I wrap this up. And also, please feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I get up to more bookish shenanigans. And that is where I post all of my book content first. I post goofy stuff in the reels, or not the reels. I don't post reels. Ain't nobody got time for that. In the Instagram stories, because, like I said earlier, have you laughed today? I hope, you can look in my Instagram stories and have a chuckle. That is all. This was a 35-minute review. We're going to edit that down. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.